Excellent. Welcome everyone to our session. We are talking about alternative financing for small businesses in today's session, and we're really pleased to be here. Thank you so much to the U.S. Haitian Chamber of Commerce for putting on this excellent conference, and so needed. I think so many small businesses are trying to figure out how are we going to get into 2021 on the right foot. And so hopefully many of these workshops today and yesterday are helping you think about that. My name is Aliana Pinheiro, and I am with Boston Impact Initiative. We're a local impact investor here, and we'll get into a little bit more about what we do at our organization. But I have background and experience both in finance and in social enterprise. And I'm the impact director at Boston Impact Initiative. So we really pay a lot of attention to not only the financial health of an organization or a business that we invest in, but also the positive effects that that business can have on the community, on the planet, the environment, and for the workers and the owners. Let me hand it over to Henry Noel, my co-presenter and my colleague at BII.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Aliana. I'm happy to be here. Again, Henry Noel from BII. I'm the investment director there. And what's particularly exciting about this conference for me is that I'm Haitian American. And previous to my role at BII, I actually was working to start a fund to invest in Haiti particularly. So again, very close to my heart. What's exciting about today is the idea that as our environment has been changing, both from an economic perspective and politically. There's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of uncertainty with businesses, and we're here to talk about a few different opportunities that we think are financing for critical times, and different financing options and things that you may be interested in or that may provide solutions for your particular business. So we're really excited to share some of our approach with you.
Excellent. With that, I'm going to share my screen and we can just get started. Oh, and sorry, one housekeeping item. I wanted to let you know that as you go through the presentation or see anything that you might have a question about, please put your questions in the Q&A. And when we are finished with the presentation, we will come back and answer some of those questions. But yeah, please feel free to put them in the Q&A and then we will definitely circle back to them and get to them. Here we go. So as Henry mentioned, alternative financing for small businesses. So we are really today going to think about, what are ways now, given that the environment has changed, the economic environment has changed. Obviously, we're all feeling the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the businesses, as well as on our communities and on our health. And the way that it's really changed the way we live and the way we spend and the way we interact with businesses. And so businesses have been figuring out how to pivot, how to recover some of the lost revenue. And also that means that the financing really needs to meet them where they are. So at Boston Impact Initiative, we've really been thinking a lot about this and been thinking about ways in which we can be flexible as investors in order to meet entrepreneurs where they are. Just as an aside, you can follow us and tweet or contact us on Instagram through Boss Impact. You can see on the bottom of the slide, and also check out our website, bostonimpact.org. There we go. So just a little overview of BII to give you a sense of what we're doing. Our investment thesis really is centered around again, we're impact investors. So we're investing in businesses and, we're expecting to get return our capital, but we're really thinking about it from the lens of sustainability, inclusivity, and really thinking about how can we create an equitable economy. We invest integrated capital, which I'll get into a little bit later in the presentation. And we're really focused again on regenerative local enterprises. So organizations that are really contributing to their community and thinking about how they can connect with other local organizations and enterprises within their community. And we're looking to restore the productive capacity of communities of color. I think for so long, communities of color have been extracted from labor and even the environment where many BIPOC communities live are often more polluted and less cared for by greater society. How can we invest in businesses that think about that in a different way and that are really thinking about how do we regenerate these communities rather than extract from them? So that's kind of our framing and how we think about things. We break it down into these investment criteria. So we focus on community resilience, which is really focused on the place, the environment, how organizations or businesses are connected to community in their place. And that's really important for us because, we think about kind of how do we keep the money flowing within the community and not going out of the community, again, avoiding that extractive practice. Economic justice is core for us. And it's really from a perspective of, ownership. Who are the owners? Are they BIPOC owners? Are they owners that are normally not seen in that sector or industry? But also from an opportunity perspective, from the workers. Who works at this place? Are they local? Are they from the neighborhood around? Is there an opportunity for returning citizens, for immigrants, for women recently back from re-entering the workforce, or all different types of ways to think about how can we create opportunity for our community. And then participation, who has the opportunity to own this company and participate in the governance of this company? And so that's another question we ask when we're thinking about investments that we are looking at. Then finally, of course, again, because we are an investor, we're investing in businesses. We are looking at enterprise health, but we really think about it from a sort of longer term sustainability rather than looking for the next kind of unicorn, next hot disruptor idea that might make us, millions of dollars. We're thinking about from quarter to quarter, how are these companies kind of slowly but surely growing their business and doing so in a sustainable way. And so again, this is our investment criteria. This is how we think about what we're investing in as we look for new investments. And really, when we come at it from this angle, then the financing on the other side about what the company actually needs, that's, we're lucky that we're kind of flexible enough that that's just open for us. We can invest equity, we invest debt, we even provide small grants in certain circumstances. And we call this integrated capital. But essentially we are thinking about those impact criteria first, and then to saying, okay, we want to finance this company. How are we going to make this happen? What is the instrument that needs to be used in order to make this happen? You see on the third point there, we put the long-term relationship with an enterprise at the center of our investing strategy. I want to say highlight long-term, because we many times have put, various times throughout a business's, growth history, have put money in, maybe first there was a grant just to get them started. And then there was, a loan of a certain amount for equipment financing. And then there's, maybe they decide they're going to raise equity. And so then we get equity in the company and make an equity investment. So really thinking about how can we meet them where they are and match what they need, rather than sort of just saying, hey, we offer 5-year term loans, that's it. So really thinking about how can we have flexibility around the way that we lend. And we've been thinking about this especially now and in the last really almost year. Henry's going to talk a bit about, how we've been making our money work in times of crisis, and what how we've been even more creative in thinking about what we can do for the businesses who are affected by COVID.
Thank you, Aliana. So really, as Aliana said, the key is matching the solution to the opportunity. So as a business comes in, or as we start evaluating a business, we don't want to, again, say we're limited to 5-year term notes or 3-year term notes, or this is how you're going to do it. We want to see what's the best solution for you at this particular time, and then going forward, how can we stay involved in the growth of that business and watch the whole cycle develop. So we do everything from straight debt, that 5-year term note that we talked about, to straight equity, and then everything in between. So we'll look at things like accounts receivable financing, we'll look at purchase order financing, grants receivable financing. So and just pause there with grants, where some nonprofit organizations have gaps in where they're awarded a grant, but the cash flows don't necessarily match up with how they need to disperse or with their programming. And again, so we'll look at how can we be flexible in helping them along their missions. What we want to talk about a little bit more in detail today is revenue-based financing. It's been called revenue-based financing, royalty financing. There's a lot of different terms, but the idea is it's a type of financing where we're trying to align ourselves with the entrepreneur, and in a difficult time like we have right now, as revenues can be fluctuating quite a bit, this matches some of those requirements with those revenues. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Just to give you an idea, for those of you who watch Shark Tank, it's interesting where we actually can mirror ourselves or think of ourselves as Mr. Wonderful. So where all the others are talking about different ideas of, yes, we'll take this equity position or that equity position, Mr. Wonderful oftentimes is the one thinking about, well, how about we do this, where you give us a piece of your revenues or royalties over a certain time period. Now, sometimes he is a little bit greedy, but we are looking at a piece of your revenues over time so that the note automatically pays itself off. If you go to the next screen, please, Aliana. So revenue-based financing. Again, what we're looking at doing here is we're making a loan, and it's going to be based off of the revenues that a company has. The typical loan is, or the terms typically are, we're looking at anywhere from 2 to 10% of your gross revenues, and we're going to be, that will be paid back to us over a certain amount of time. Now that payback amount can be valued at, or it can be calculated as a fixed amount of time, as a multiple amount of the loan that's paid that you took out, or as a specific return requirement until that return requirement is reached. All of these things allow us to basically pull different levers and make it right for the entrepreneur. So for one company, it may be where they have great margins, very, very strong margins, and we can take a larger percentage of their revenues, and that way they pay it off quicker. And at the same time, it doesn't, as revenues grow, as their growth pattern happens, or as they experience growth, we're able to get more of our money up front. And if we were calculating by IRR, for example, then the payment, the loan would be over a bit quicker. If we're doing it by multiple, again, it's the idea of what really fits the bill and what are we as an investor coming up with in conjunction with the entrepreneur to figure out what's the best plan for you. The key about revenue-based financing is the structure and the alignment that it allows between us, the investor, and you, the entrepreneur. Again, with the example of COVID that just happened recently, or we're still in COVID, but the shock to many companies was, we're humming along, doing pretty well in 2019. And in 2020, you had some businesses that went 50% decrease in revenues. Some went even to zero. What do you do in that case where you have a fixed loan and that payment is due? This is a tool that allows for quite a bit of flexibility built in. So your revenues were at X, you got hit and they went down by 20%. Well, now the payment that you're going to be paying us back, that corresponding payment also goes down by the 20% so that it matches that change. Again, trying to be innovative and figure out how can we best align ourselves with our entrepreneurs. Aliana is going to go through now a few examples of where we've used different products to in our portfolio and how that's made sense for them.
Yeah, thank you, Henry, for that great explanation of revenue-based financing. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section, and we can go through and walk through some different questions. But I thought it would be helpful, or we thought it would be helpful, to provide a couple of examples of one of revenue-based financing, but then also of a different type of financing that Henry mentioned earlier on the next slide. On this slide, Valley Home Insulation is a company that opened in January of 2020. As many of you, I have a small toddler at home, and he has just run into the room. So I apologize, but that's what's going on in my life right now. We heard dog barking in the background at Henry's house too, so we're all home, right? Okay, go out, thank you. Valley Home Insulation is a company that opened, imagine this, in January 2020, and they took off running. They had great sales. Basically what they do is they do home energy audits in the Merrimack Valley region in Massachusetts, so really Lawrence and the surrounding towns. And they are a Spanish-speaking staff, so that's a very majority Latino community. They can go in, do home energy audits, see, does the house need to be weatherized? Do you need to fix your boiler? Like, here's different types of light bulbs and shower heads to decrease your carbon footprint. So really a very aligned organization. Excuse me, I just closed my door. Sorry about that. Very aligned organization with our mission. But they came to us after COVID hit, March, everything shut down. Nobody wanted anybody in their house, of course, so they just had to shut down their operations. And they said, listen, they came to us and said, listen, we were gangbusters right when we started. We were doing really great. They showed us the numbers. We know that when the restrictions in Massachusetts lift and we are able to go into people's homes again safely, that we're just going to have these, we have these home energy audits lined up. But we don't know when that is. And if there's a second shutdown or a second wave, and we have another kind of pause to our activity, that will make the loan repayment sort of unsure. And so we worked with them to come up with a royalty structure, a revenue-based structure. They were looking to buy a second van because they knew that their one van, they could only do one audit at a time, one house at a time. And now they wanted to have a separate crew and do two at the same time, growing their business. And they said that we know we're going to need this once we can start working again. So we designed this deal so that we gave them, the money to buy we loaned them the money to buy the new van and some startup, capital for their new crew, their new team. And then we said, okay, now every month we're going to get access to your QuickBooks, right? So this is just the nuts and bolts of how we did it. We're going to get access to your QuickBooks, and we're going to see your revenue number, and we're going to contact you and say, hey, does this seem right for February? Yes. Or January? Yes. Okay, great. So then you're going to send us a percentage, and it was a small percentage off the top of that top line revenue. They send us that payment. And so, they have since the certain restrictions in Massachusetts have lifted, they have been able to do home energy audits. They've since slowed down a bit because, again, COVID is rearing its ugly head again. And we have a higher case count, especially in Lawrence and those communities right now. So they have been slowing down a little bit. But just to say that slowdown, they don't have to be stressed about, oh no, I can't make my, X amount of payment, because their payment is based on the revenue. And so again, this is just to highlight that uncertainty is, is there in the equation. And so how do we adjust our model, and how do we adjust the way that we are lending to really fit with that uncertainty and ride with them, Henry, I don't know if you want to add anything about that.
Well, no, you explained it perfectly, and the idea really is the alignment piece again, and it allows for, as the business does start improving and as things really do start coming back, if you will, and as the environment changes, it gives them the opportunity to pay back the loan at an even greater rate. So it really allows them to again, it aligns them with us as far as an investor, because the quicker the loan is paid off, the higher the interest, the IRR that we receive. Or if it does take a longer period of time, it's that flexibility that's built in for them, and they're able to benefit from that. So it was a good fit, and because of the nature of their business, again, it allowed for us to look at that type of a structure.
Thanks, Henry. Okay. And then another example, this is not royalty-based financing, but Henry had also mentioned at the beginning of his section about PO financing, or purchase order financing. Now, if you're in the Boston area and you're in the kind of culinary industry, you might know about Sweet Tea's Bakery. Teresa Maynard is everywhere. And she operates out of Commonwealth Kitchen. Commonwealth Kitchen, I think, also is doing a session today or tomorrow at the conference. We're close partners with them. But essentially, Teresa Maynard went from being a home baker. She's a nut-free baker because she has an allergy, and her children have an allergy to nuts. And she realized that it's really hard to find nut-free baked goods. She saw a business opportunity and said, I'm going to do this, small scale. I'm going to rent space at a shared kitchen, but have my equipment and do it nut-free. And so she has started this business. And so she was doing, some corporate orders, some special occasion cakes and cupcakes. And Commonwealth Kitchen actually has a relationship with Whole Foods. And so Teresa met the representative from Whole Foods, I guess not last year, but the year before, when they're kind of scouting out deals or new products for Thanksgiving for their local stores. They wanted something local for Thanksgiving. And they asked her to do pies, these mini pies, which you can see her holding in her hand there, for Thanksgiving. And she had to fulfill an order of, it says 4 orders of 48,000 pies over the, I think it was a 3 or 4 month period, kind of pie season, right? The fall, when everybody wants to eat pie. And she had only ever made, a maximum of, I believe it was like, in the low thousands, 1 or 2, maybe 3,000 of these pies at a time. But the idea of getting an order for 48,000 pies at a time and having to get that out the door, I mean, you need money to do that. If you're a solopreneur, a sole proprietor, you don't have the team or the inventory, the ingredients on hand to do that. So she had to, kind of figure out who she was going to hire, which she hired, definitely, it says here, second chance employer, but she hired a couple of returning citizens and who she knew from her network and work at the Commonwealth Kitchen. And it was pie palooza. She said they made pies for months. But when she had that purchase order, this is where the financing comes in. I'm so excited about the pies. When she had that purchase order, she came to us and she said, I need to get this money up front because I don't have the money to finance this. And so we said, sure, let's do PO financing. It's a short-term loan based on and secured on the purchase order that she has from Whole Foods, which is obviously a reputable purchaser. And so we gave her the money for a certain percentage. I don't remember, it was 75 or 80% of the purchase order. And then she was able to finance her operation until she got paid from Whole Foods, which happens, of course, after the pies are delivered. I think that's the hard thing with, organizations like Whole Foods. They say, oh, we want diversity and we want local and we want small and we want to support, but they're not going to pay up front, right? So you need financing and they really need to figure out, but you need financing to be able to do those orders. And so that's what we did with Teresa, and that we've done this with a couple of other organizations and businesses where we've provided PO financing or even project financing, because the payment comes after the delivery of the good or service. Henry, I don't know if you want to add anything on PO financing specifically.
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. The hardest part with being an entrepreneur is to say no to a huge order because you can't handle it from the standpoint of financing. So we want to alleviate that for you. We want to be your partner there and help you say yes.
Exactly. I want to check in. So we were going to pause here and see if there were questions. And I just want to check in and see if there are questions in the Q&A, which I can't tell. Oh, we have any?
I don't
At this time, it doesn't seem to be any.
Okay.
Yeah, at this time, there aren't questions in the Q&A.
Okay. I want to encourage people, this is a workshop. It is, bring your questions and your, difficult to solve issues and ask us, and we are here to answer your questions. But if there aren't questions, I think what we could do now maybe is go through the example of royalty revenue-based financing and really walk through how it works. I'm going to pull that slide up for you, Henry. Oops. There we go.
All right, so what we did here is really I wanted to show, we've talked about the concept. I wanted to show what the nuts and bolts look like, just to get an idea of the moving parts here. So first thing is, we're using the example of a $100,000 loan. We've determined that 7% is what we're going to do on the royalty agreement. So basically we're saying on that $100,000 for the loan, we're going to take 7% of your revenues, and let's see how that works out with the different scenario in different scenarios as far as growth rates and the payback period. So what we've determined is, if we take a look at first of all, I want to look at the bottom line, all the way at the bottom. It says traditional 5-year 5% loan. On a traditional 5-year 5% loan, well, you know that the interest rate you're paying is 5%, and the annual payments there would be $22,645 every year. So regardless of ups and downs, that's how much you're paying. If we contrast that with the optimistic scenario right before that, where things are going great and they're getting even better. So there we could see that at that 7%, the royalty payments, the first year is $21,000. In your second year, there was a 50% growth rate or a 50% increase in your sales from 300 to 450,000. So now your payment that you're paying us is $31,000. Again, it's growing in relation to what your sales are doing. So you're paying more there than you would have in your traditional loan. However, you have the capacity to do so. That's the important part. If we continue on that same line, the next year goes down to 20%. Sorry, it still is growth, but not as much as the 50. So you have 20% growth, then 10, then 10. And you see that basically that loan is paid off in 5 years. For the investor, it worked out because we have an internal rate of return of 11.6% on that one loan. Whereas for the entrepreneur, it worked out as well because they got the money they needed ahead of time, or they got the loan they needed, and they were able to pay that off. Now that's the optimistic scenario. Let's take a look at the pessimistic scenario. Same loan amount, $300,000. Your first year, you're paying $21,000, very similar to the fixed term loan where you were paying $22,000. But then COVID happens, or another shock, whatever the case may be, and you have a 50% hit to your top line revenues. You go from 300,000 down to 150,000. Well, beauty with a revenue-based loan is your payment follows that. So you're not paying 21,000 as in the year before. Now you're paying 10,000. Again, giving you that flexibility to be able to manage that huge dip in your revenues for whatever reason that may have come to pass. As we look further out, it just shows you as you are now growing back, as the business is coming back, your payments are following suit. And so it's taking a longer time to pay this deal off, or to pay this to repay this loan. However, you're able to do so, and that's the important part. So you're able to do it. You receive the financing you needed. The investor's happy. We've gotten our internal rate of return of 6.4%, and it's something that, again, matching what you can do with the times, and making sure that you're not at a point where your revenues go down 50% and you still have a $22,000 payment that's required back.
I just want to highlight something, Henry, that you just mentioned, and I just want to kind of
Please.
bring it to light, which is, you see the difference here, in the optimistic scenario, the internal rate of return, the IRR going back to the investor, over those 5 years is 11.6. Whereas in the pessimistic scenario, we get paid over 9 years, and it's, 9 years, and it's, and 6.4. And so just to be like, kind of call out the point that, if the investee, if the company does well, the investor does well. If the investee doesn't do as well, our, return is also kind of mirrors that kind of more pessimistic scenario. So just to say that, like, there's a little bit of a sense of kind of risk that's taken on by the investor, but also upside, or even not quite downside, but sort of there's a range of what the investor can get. I don't know if, Henry, you want to comment on that, because it's different from a term loan.
Sure, absolutely. And essentially we're sharing in the opportunity on the upside, and we're sharing in the risk to the downside from the perspective of our potential return that we're getting back is lower. So that's the whole point of the alignment piece, where it really doesn't put us at odds, and it helps the entrepreneur in times of potential trouble. So it's something that really, gives you a bit more peace of mind, if you will.
Great. Want to check back in. I don't think I see any questions. We sort of expected to be, doing a little bit of Q&A here, but maybe I can just go to this final. Oh no, I mean, we've kind of talked through some of this, but I mean, perhaps we can talk through the differences here, Henry.
Sure,
Yeah.
Some of these just are examples of the many different types of financing we do. And again, the idea is, what do you need as a small business, and what makes sense? So accounts receivable financing, we're going to look to, are you a business that's been in operations for some time, and the time that you're receiving your payments back, you have some very creditable creditors, or some credit-worthy creditors. However, they take a long time to pay. And that just doesn't match up with the needs on your side from a cash flow perspective. Well, we've done some financing where we've taken a look at, okay, who are your creditors? How much do they owe? And what is the aging of that type of the receivables? And can we lend against that? And that's been what's been very effective for some of our portfolio companies. We went to purchase order financing. Aliana spoke about that earlier. And the grants receivables, again, we talked about that briefly. If you're a not-for-profit, again, trying to align when it is that you're expecting or actually receiving some of the expected grants that were made, or grants that you have been awarded, that may not match up with your cash flows. So therefore, we'd like to, see how we can help in that regard.
Oh, I got a message to go over the impact covenants. Sure, yes, definitely. Um, Henry, thank you for that. I think, these are what we've been surprised about is that this isn't the type of financing that many funders provide, but I think if entrepreneurs and business owners are sort of armed with this information and can go out and ask for what they need, oftentimes, there's a lot of organizations out there that want to help a business, but just haven't thought of doing this, or kind of didn't know this was in their, wheelhouse of options. So just to say that as an entrepreneur, if you have a better idea of what your business needs, um, and you can articulate that to people who are lenders or other financing organizations, CDFIs, CDCs, that can go a long way. I mean, I think one, it sort of shows your knowledge of like your sophistication and your knowledge of the different options out there. But two, it gives them a sense of like, okay, yes, like I'm not going to try to fit them in the term loan category. Like they really need accounts receivable financing, or they really need royalty-based financing or revenue-based financing.
And one quick point on that to follow up there is, um, a lot of these are not necessarily new, but they're new to us. They're new to the small business space. So accounts receivable financing, you'll find many large institutions that do just that, but they do it for much larger entities. Whereas now we're trying to say, in our space, in this small business world, it's needed as well. These tools make sense for you. And through BI, at BII, we're trying to bring those down as well to the small business market.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go into, so we normally talk about impact covenants when we talk about the work that we do, just because it's an added part of our impact work. And so since we don't have other questions and there was a request for us to talk about that, I'm going to just go through that. But again, if you have any questions, you have not missed your chance. So if you have any questions about the alternative financing, revenue-based financing, please put that in the Q&A, and we'd be happy to talk about that. Oops. Here we go. Okay, so as an impact investor, just going back to the beginning of the presentation, we were talking about how BII is an impact investor, and we are really committed to helping, one, selecting companies that are impactful and thinking about that from a community level, as we talked about, and economic justice perspective. But we also want to help those companies maintain their impact. We want to kind of protect for downside on impact, and provide the companies with incentives, especially if they have other kind of competing interests, or there's another lender who doesn't care as much about impact, or if there's voices in the organization that aren't as interested in impact. These impact goals or impact covenants that we bake into our loan term sheets and into side letters when we make an equity or convertible note investments, these are all ways to sort of write down and attach a financial incentive to achieving a non-financial return, which is impact. So some examples of this might be paying a premium or paying living wage. We use the MIT living wage calculator, which is a great resource, and I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it before. But minimum wage in any state is not usually going to get the worker to a sustainable place where they can work just 40 hours and support themselves, or support themselves and a child, or another, a spouse or dependent. So we really encourage our companies to pay living wage. Living wage up until last year is about $15.25. This year has gone up actually to $17 50 about in the Massachusetts area and in Suffolk County specifically. And so, that could be difficult for some companies that that are in an industry that are paying minimum or closer to minimum wage. And so what we do is we say, okay, this is a commitment that the company has said, hey, we really want to make sure we're treating our workers well, we're paying them enough. Great. We're on board for that too. And so when we do the term sheet, we write in the covenants, there's certain non-financial covenants, and these are included there. And they basically say, either that there's some ramp up to living wage, or that they get to living wage by, a certain year. And if they don't, there can be an increase in their interest rate for the loan. We usually do 50 basis points, 0.5%. Or if they do reach that, then they get a decrease in their interest rate. And so what that does is really create a financial incentive, and sets a goal and then creates a financial incentive to meet that goal. Some other examples of these besides living wage, as you can see here in the list, are compensation ratios, especially in an organization either that has, some kind of less skilled or kind of very specific work, either manufacturing or I think food manufacturing is a great example actually, or we have childcare as well. And then there's a large organization, right? And there's sort of VPs and executives. We want to make sure that the lowest paid worker at the organization isn't making many, many multiples less than the highest paid worker at the organization. Because the idea is that the organization can, make enough to take care of everybody. Not that, there's, can't remember what company it is that pays everybody the same exact amount. There's some tech company. Everybody gets paid $70,000 a year, even the CEO. And, great. But, it doesn't have to be that, but saying, hey, let's keep this, 3 to 1. Let's keep this 5 to 1. For some where there's like really in an industry where there's usually a lot of spread. And I'll just say that, some of the larger, like Fortune 500 companies, I mean, the CEOs are making millions and millions of dollars, and the lowest paid worker is making $12.50 or, $13.50 maybe this year in Massachusetts. The minimum wage went up. But thinking about how the lowest paid worker can be pulled up as the highest paid workers are awarded for their work as well. Creating good jobs in neighborhood where the organization operates or in surrounding neighborhoods, building worker ownership either through cooperatives or ESOP or employee stock option plans. That's really exciting for us, and we think that having ownership as part of our economic justice thesis really is very, very attractive to us, and really we think that's a great way to create wealth in communities. Let's see. Losing my breath here. Especially, in governance, we find a lot of times organizations are sort of, maybe they're serving a population or creating kind of low-paying jobs for a certain neighborhood or community, a community of color, and then the owners and the executives, most of them are, white, or the board of directors, most of them are white. And so really thinking about, how does your organization as a whole reflect the community that you're working with, and also just making sure that diversity is part of the fabric of the companies that we invest in. As an economic justice investor, that's super important to us. And then the last one that's on this list, which is one of the common ones that we use as well, is thinking about who your vendors are, who you're purchasing from, as you make your products, as you buy your ingredients. Are you prioritizing local vendors first? Again, how can we contribute to the our local economy, to our neighbors? Are you trying to make sure that you have diversity in your supply chain? Very important to us, and we think it should be important to other small businesses, because you don't have to wait until you're. I think the moral of this story is there's a lot of there. It's possible to make an impact even if you're a small business. We think as an investor, there are ways to incentivize your companies to do so, and you don't have to wait until you're big to think about who you're purchasing from, or to think about paying your workers a living wage. If you build that into your business model from the beginning, and really are intentional about it, you can model it and make it happen. Henry, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Sure. Well, I think the overriding idea is something you said earlier, Aliana, and it's really the fact that these are covenants that we put in place to work with the entrepreneur. And these are sentiments and goals that the entrepreneurs often have themselves. And they bring them to the table, and we help them quantify them, and we help them really set specific goals around the directions that they wanted to go and the values that they had in place to start with. So it's not meant to be something that you have to do this or else, or you're not going to get funding from us. It's really a matter of, what are the values that you have? What are the values that we share together in common? And how do we build some covenants around strengthening those aspects of your business so we can make sure that they last for the long term? And that's the beauty about putting some of these things into place, so you can really start visualizing and start taking account of the goals that you had in the beginning, and seeing that come to fruition.
Thanks for saying that, Henry. Yeah, I got so carried away. I get really passionate about impact and things. I got so carried away, I didn't say, sometimes we don't use these at all. And sometimes it makes sense to put one in place, and sometimes we have 3 or 4. And it depends on the organization, the business that we're investing in. It depends on what the owners and the entrepreneurs really are thinking about in terms of their impact goals. And we have to be aligned on this. We cannot force a business to decide to do this. We can't force these things. And if it's a business that is in an industry that just there's no way, or it's very difficult to get to living wage right off the bat for the employees that are just starting there, we try to figure out, okay, what are other ways, or but we're not going to say no, we can't invest in you. Like, we really try to think about different ways to encourage and help model out the financial scenarios, and all of that to make it easy for the companies to do, and it has to be something that we agree on together. And I think just another point to what Henry just said is that I think at times, this was actually in the appendix of our presentation, we weren't necessarily going to present this, because I think at times people see this, small businesses see this, and they're like, wow, more hoops to jump through for a minority owned business. Like, what is this, and that is not at all how we use these. That is not at all how we, attempt to create impact. We are an investor that works to align with businesses that are already thinking about these things. They're already doing them. It's something they want to do for their community already. So we never want these to be hoops that someone has to jump through to get financing by any means. It's all just, a way for the company and us to kind of express many times the shared goals that they already have, for the impact that they want to make in their community. With that, I'm going to just check again if there's any questions. I don't think so.
I don't see any questions yet in the chat. I think we have a shy group of people, or everyone's very, very much, they understand everything quite a bit. And what I would definitely advise, though, or invite you to do, is please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly. If anything that we said resonates with you specifically to your business, or to opportunities that you may have been thinking about. We're very interested in hearing from you and working with various companies at different stages, from startups to mature businesses. We're very interested in hearing what it is that moves you and what brought you here, what brought you along your whole entrepreneurial path, if you will. That's the best part of the job for me, is understanding why it is that you do what you do, why it is or how it is that you plan on contributing to the social fabric of our communities, and how can we help?
Yes, thank you, Henry. Yeah, I'll just echo that it is, really through forums like this that we get to meet the entrepreneurs that end up getting financing from us. So if you're in Eastern Massachusetts, or you know a business that is in Eastern Massachusetts, and you're interested in learning more about us and our alternative financing tools and products, please contact us, and we'd be happy to have a first conversation. I think for us, really the relationship, again, I said it before, but the relationship with the entrepreneur is everything. We just had a deal pitch yesterday at our investment committee, and I think I've spoken to the person who pitched like at least 6 times. We've had we've provided technical assistance already. We did lots of modeling for her business. We helped her with the presentation. So just to say that, like, there's a lot of time and work and kind of nurturing of the relationship, and making sure that the business it kind of puts their best foot forward. So please, even if you're at an early stage, we'd love to hear from you. We have one question. Let's see.
Absolutely. And while you're looking at the question, to that point, this is definitely a relationship business, and we want to, even if you're not looking for money right now, or you're not at that stage right now, we want to be in contact with you now, learning about your vision and helping to strategize, so that in the future we can be a resource, or we can point you to the right direction to other resources if we aren't the one that's going to be the best for you.
Mm-hmm. The question we got was, is there a sister organization in Rhode Island? And I am not aware of a similar fund in Rhode Island. I do know that there is an accelerator that works out of, I think, Providence, that's also in kind of the group of inclusive capital providers. And I'm just looking for the name of, I'll find that for you. But I'd say also looking up local CDFIs, or community development finance institutions, kind of alternatives to banks that oftentimes can provide this this type of financing. Oh, we got some stuff in the chat. Let's see. And oh yes.
Just some responses as far as additional
Excellent.
resources that you might look into for Rhode Island.
Oh, excellent. Yes.
Yeah, social enterprise greenhouse in Providence.
Greenhouse. Yes, that's what I was looking for. Thank you, Maggie.
Greenhouse?
Yes. Thank you. Oh, great. And then Blue Hub and CFNE. So Maggie, she's in the chat. She works with the Cooperative Fund of New England. And so if there are any cooperatives on this call that need financing, reach out to us, and also reach out to Cooperative Fund of New England, and we could even do the deal together. Okay. Excellent. Well, if there's no more questions, I think we're coming up on the hour, and I think we can wrap up. I don't know, Henry, if you have any final comments, but I think we can wrap up. Just please get in touch with us. You have our emails there. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram and things, and yeah, get in touch with us. We'd be happy to hear from you.
Thank you for being with us for the past hour. We appreciate it.
Yes. Okay, Emanuela, I think we are set. We had a shy audience today, which is okay. But we are really pleased to have been invited here. Thank you so much for giving us the space to
Great, wonderful
talk with
workshop.
us.
And I took down some notes myself. Thank you very
Excellent.
much. Have a
Excellent.
wonderful weekend.
Thank
Great.
you. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.